The rain poured heavily as Amara stood in front of her family home, watching the last of her belongings being loaded into a truck. The sound of the rain pelting the roof of the car was the only noise, drowning out the overwhelming feelings of betrayal that crashed against her chest. Her brother, Kofi, stood just behind her, his face blank, a strange, almost hollow expression hanging in his eyes. "You're doing the right thing, Amara," Kofi said, trying to sound reassuring, but his voice trembled as though even he didn't believe his words. Amara didn't reply. She didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. In one move, Kofi had turned her world upside down. She had trusted him with the most important thing in her life, her home, and he had sold it without a word to her, as if the very idea of betrayal didn't mean anything to him. The truck rumbled as it started up, its tires sinking into the wet ground, the rearview mirror reflecting the fading glow of Amara's once beloved home. She watched it all disappear, her breath catching in her throat as her eyes burned with unshed tears. But she didn't cry. No, there were no tears left. Only the cold, hard anger that gripped her heart, making her bones ache. She turned her back to the house and walked away. But hey, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Stick with us to the end. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming. Her life had been built on caring for others. As a nurse in the city of Accra, Amara had given everything to her patients, putting them before herself, working endless shifts, tending to wounds that couldn't heal, illnesses that couldn't be cured. The work was exhausting, and yet, she carried on because she believed it was her calling. But now, this betrayal from Kofi, someone who was supposed to be her protector, her family, it shattered everything. She walked to her new home, a small, crumbling apartment in Coral Gano, a far cry from the comfortable space she had left behind. The place was small, cramped, and a far cry from what she had been used to, but she had no choice. She was on her own now. The weight of the world felt heavier with every step, but she kept moving. She had to. What else could she do? Inside the apartment, the silence was thick. The walls, stained and cracked, seemed to whisper the desperation of others who had lived there before her. But Amara wasn't one to complain. She had been given the worst of the hand, but she could play it. She could survive. And most importantly, she would find a way to get back what was stolen from her. Weeks passed, and Amara adjusted to her new life. The once bright and hopeful woman now wore a look of quiet determination. She took odd nursing shifts, scrubbing floors in hospitals, attending to patients who were too poor to pay for proper care. Every penny she earned went into a small savings jar. Every shift was another step towards reclaiming the life she had lost. One evening, as Amara was walking home, she passed a billboard plastered with the face of her brother Kofi. He was smiling, surrounded by luxury cars and a massive dealership logo. The headline boasted, "Kofi Osei, the man who rebuilt Accra's car empire." The words hit Amara like a slap in the face. How could he stand there, smiling, while she was left with nothing? How was it possible that he had not only betrayed her, but had risen to such success on the back of her pain? The rage inside her began to bubble. But it wasn't the kind of rage that would consume her. No, this was calculated, strategic. She would get back what was rightfully hers. Not through violence, not through revenge, but through strategy, through outsmarting him. Through reclaiming her dignity. Amara's health slowly began to improve as time passed. She wasn't the same woman who had been abandoned and broken. The fire inside her was reigniting. Each day she planned her next move. One day, while having tea at a local cafe, she overheard two businessmen talking about Kofi. One of them was ranting about how Kofi had scammed him with a bad business deal, taking his money and running with it. "Another one of those schemes," the man muttered. "Osei's empire is built on lies, on stolen money." That was all Amara needed to hear. The next day, Amara sought out Kwame Karunja, a wealthy businessman who had also been a victim of Kofi's fraudulent schemes. Karunja, a man with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, had been burned by Kofi's charm. He had lost millions in a car dealership scam that Kofi had masterminded, making promises of high returns that never came. Amara knew that Karunja would want revenge, just as much as she did. So, she met with him and shared her plan. "I know what he's done to you, Karunja," she began, her voice low but firm. "But I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for justice. I want to take him down, but I want it to be legal. I want him to lose everything, not because of violence, but because of his own greed." Karunja studied her for a moment, sizing her up. "You have a plan?" he asked, intrigued. Amara nodded. "We're going to create a false investment opportunity. A high-end medical clinic project that Kofi will think will make him rich. We'll make him sign over his assets without even realizing what he's doing." Karunja smiled, a slow, dangerous grin. "I like the way you think, Amara. Let's take him down, but in style." The plan began to take shape. Amara and Karunja put together a fake investment proposal, a medical clinic that promised to revolutionize healthcare in Accra. They made it look legitimate, backing it with fake investors and lavish promises. Kofi, blinded by greed and his own ego, would never see it coming. When they presented the plan to him, his eyes lit up. This was just the kind of thing Kofi loved. A chance to make millions with little effort. He signed the papers without hesitation, believing it would propel him to even greater heights. But as the documents were signed, Amara and Karunja's plan was set into motion. 60% of Kofi's assets, his cars, his dealership, his properties, were quietly transferred into a trust controlled by Amara. It was legal, it was strategic, and it was exactly what she needed to reclaim her dignity. Kofi didn't notice at first. His empire continued to grow, and he basked in his success. But soon the cracks began to show. Suppliers began demanding payment. His accounts were frozen. His luxury cars were repossessed. Employees started leaving. It didn't take long for Kofi to realize that something was wrong. He stormed into Amara's clinic one day, furious, his face red with anger. "Amara," he shouted, "what have you done to me?" Amara stood calm, looking at him with eyes full of quiet strength. "I've done nothing but take back what you stole from me, Kofi," she said, her voice steady. "You sold my home. You sold my life. Now I've reclaimed it." Kofi froze. His mind raced as he connected the dots. The documents, the missing assets, the frozen accounts, it all came together. His empire was collapsing. You took everything," Kofi whispered, his voice breaking. Amara stepped closer to him, her eyes unflinching. "I didn't take everything, Kofi. I only took what was mine. You've built your empire on lies, on the backs of people like me. Now you'll understand what it feels like to lose everything." By the time Kofi fully grasped the magnitude of his loss, the damage was done. His dealership was in ruins. His once thriving empire was reduced to nothing more than a pile of broken dreams and unpaid debts. Amara, however, was not looking for destruction. With the assets she had regained, she built a children's clinic on the outskirts of Accra. She provided free healthcare to children in need, giving them a chance at life that was so often denied. She paid her staff fairly, and the clinic flourished. The community embraced her with open arms. They didn't know about Kofi's downfall or the source of the funds. All they knew was that Amara had given them something they desperately needed, hope. But Kofi was still broken, humiliated and penniless. He sought out Amara one final time. He found her at the clinic, speaking with one of the nurses. "I've come to apologize," he said quietly. His head hung low. Amara turned to him, her face softening. "It's not about the money, Kofi," she said. "It's about the trust. You broke it, and now I've reclaimed what was mine. But I won't hold it against you." Kofi looked at her, eyes filled with remorse. "I was selfish. I was blind. I didn't realize how far I'd gone. I've lost everything. But I'm sorry, Amara. I truly am." Amara nodded. "The only way to rebuild is through humility. I'll help you, but only if you're willing to start over, honestly, without the lies." In the months that followed, Kofi found work consulting for local businesses. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't easy, but it was honest. And slowly, with Amara's support, he began to rebuild his life, piece by piece. Meanwhile, Amara continued to run her clinic, providing care and support to the community. Her once broken heart was now healed, not through revenge, but through giving, through reclaiming what was rightfully hers, and through forgiveness. As Amara stood before the gates of the children's clinic, she allowed herself a rare moment to pause and reflect. The sun had just begun to set, casting a golden glow over the building. It was a simple structure, but to her it was more than just a building. It was the manifestation of her strength, her perseverance, and her ability to turn tragedy into something beautiful. This was the home she had reclaimed for herself, not with vengeance, but with love, with purpose. She had taken nothing from Kofi except what was owed to her. Yet, somehow, it felt like she had gained so much more than just the wealth or the property. She had found herself again. Inside, the clinic was bustling with activity. Nurses moved through the hallways with purpose, attending to the children who had come in for treatment. Amara's heart swelled with pride as she watched them work. This clinic wasn't just a healthcare facility. It was a place of hope, a place where children who had nothing were given a chance. "You've done it, Amara." Kofi's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him standing at the doorway, his face still marked by the shame of what he had lost. He was no longer the confident businessman she had once known. Now, he was a man trying to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. "I never thought I'd see this day," Kofi continued, his voice softer than it had ever been. "I thought I could fix everything with money, with power. But I was wrong. All I ever wanted was to make you proud. And in doing that, I lost everything I ever cared about." Amara studied him quietly, the silence between them speaking volumes. She had forgiven him. That much was clear in her eyes. But forgiveness didn't mean everything would be easy. It didn't mean they could pick up where they left off. Forgiveness, for Amara, was a way to free herself, to release the weight of the past that had burdened her for so long. "You've learned your lesson, Kofi," she finally said, her voice steady but gentle. "It's not the empire that defines a man. It's how he treats the people around him, the ones he loves. You thought power would make you invincible, but it only made you blind." Kofi nodded, the weight of his past mistakes sitting heavily on his shoulders. "I see that now, Amara. I was so focused on myself, I forgot what really mattered. You're right, I was blind. And now I have to learn to see again. I want to start over, with you by my side, not as a businessman, but as a brother." Amara smiled faintly. "We'll see what happens, Kofi. I've forgiven you, but redemption isn't something that's just handed out. You have to earn it." Days turned into weeks, and Amara found herself settling into her new routine. The clinic continued to thrive, growing with each passing day, and Kofi, now stripped of his former pride, worked alongside her, not as a co-owner or a partner, but as a man trying to make amends. He took on small tasks, running errands, assisting with the clinic's administration, things that once would have seemed beneath him, but now felt like the only things worth doing. It wasn't easy. The community still viewed him with suspicion, and Kofi had to work hard to rebuild his reputation, not just as a businessman, but as a man of integrity. But with every act of kindness, every small gesture of humility, he began to earn their trust. Slowly but surely, he was learning the true meaning of respect, not the kind that comes from wealth or power, but the kind that comes from honesty and hard work. One afternoon, as Amara sat in her office, reviewing patient files, Kofi entered, holding a small box in his hands. "Amara," he said softly, his voice quieter than usual, "I know it's not much, but I wanted to do something for you, for everything you've done. For me, for the clinic, for all the lives you've changed." Amara raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Kofi placed the box on her desk and slid it across to her. "Open it," he said. Inside was a small, simple necklace, a delicate silver chain with a pendant in the shape of a heart. The engraving on the pendant was faint, but it was clear enough to read, "For the heart that never gave up." Amara's eyes softened as she picked it up, the weight of the gesture not lost on her. She had never expected anything from Kofi, let alone a symbol of his remorse and growth. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice quiet, Kofi's eyes flickered with emotion. I know I don't deserve it, Amara, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. And I'll keep trying every day, for as long as it takes. Amara smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. You're already doing better, Kofi. That's all anyone can ask for. As the months passed, Kofi continued to stay true to his word. He wasn't perfect, but he was making progress. The community, once wary of him, slowly began to embrace him. They saw the changes in him, the sincerity behind his actions. He wasn't the same man who had betrayed Amara, the same man who had built his empire on deceit and greed. No, this was a man who had learned humility, a man who had learned that true success didn't come from wealth, but from the connections you made, the lives you touched, and the integrity you held onto. Amara, too, found herself changing. The pain of her betrayal no longer consumed her. She had found peace, not just in the success of her clinic, but in the way she had reclaimed her dignity, her trust, and her ability to forgive. The hurt that had once been a constant companion was now nothing more than a distant memory, fading with each passing day. One evening, as Amara stood in the doorway of the clinic, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Kofi came to stand beside her. You've built something incredible here, he said, his voice filled with awe. Amara glanced at him, a soft smile tugging at her lips. I didn't build it alone. We all did. This clinic, this place, it's a reflection of the strength that we all have if we're willing to fight for it. Kofi nodded, his eyes filled with respect. You're right, and I'll keep fighting too. I'll keep trying to make things right. Amara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. You've already made things right, Kofi. Now, all you have to do is keep moving forward. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey settling between them. A journey of betrayal, of loss, of redemption, and of healing. And as the last rays of sunlight disappeared beneath the horizon, Amara felt a sense of peace wash over her. And there you have it, the incredible journey of Amara and Kofi's redemption and healing. A powerful story of forgiveness, humility, and the strength to rebuild, even when everything seems lost. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. Subscribe for more intense, heart-wrenching tales like this one. And remember, no matter the hardship, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.